Let's begin by all joining together and praying. Lord, may the words of my mouth and the meditation of all of our hearts be pleasing in your sight, for you are our rock, you are our Redeemer. Amen. On the wall of the family room at the Wardell house, that's Joanna's parents' house, in Kenosha, Wisconsin, hang 5 portraits. Standing tall and proud, and I'm pretty sure in every single one, big smiles, are 5 pictures of the 5 little kids in their family. And whenever we visit the Midwest and we hang out in that room and we sit there and are there for a little while, the same conversation happens because of those 5 portraits. First part of that conversation, man, were they some cute little kids? Like, if you ever see it, there's one who stands up really proud and tall and happy as a little 1-year-old, and the rest are all just beaming and smiling, and we talk about that for a little bit. But then the second part now is trying to see if our kids look like Joanna or aunts and uncles, or if they look like nobody else that's on that wall too. Even little Ophelia got in on it this last time as she stayed up late, way past her bedtime one night, so we decided for fun we're going to hold her up, lift her next to Joanna's picture, and see, does she actually look like Mom? It's fun, but honestly, isn't it kind of weird how we do this with parents and kids? I think it is. I think you've heard people say it. I think you've said it yourself. It's just something we like to do. Man, you really look like Dad. You've got Mom's eyes. Whether it's mannerisms that we have, to physical characteristics, to color of eyes, we, for some reason, love to pay attention and try to see parents in their kids and kids in their parents. Which I think all of this, honestly, is kind of a little bit weird because isn't this what we expect with parents and kids? If anything, I feel like this should probably be kind of a boring conversation and not something that we feel really comfortable talking about with strangers that we don't know in the checkout aisle and start talking about their little son that they're holding in their arms because they look too much like their dad. No. But really, shouldn't passing stuff down from parents to kids, shouldn't that be what we expect to happen? The conversation around what gets passed down from parents to kids and who looks like who has probably always been there with parents and kids. But closer to our time, in our culture, it's gotten a lot more attention now from people trying to understand what makes us who we are. Where do we find our identity? Already about 200 years ago, people started to wonder if who you are came more from your parents and grandparents and great-grandparents, or if your identity was based more on where you live and how you were raised and what kind of foods you grew up eating and all that sort of stuff. It's the question about what shapes you most. Is one's identity found in nature and just part of who you are passed down? Or is someone the experiences you've had and the interactions and the life that you've lived that shape and form your identity? If you're looking for a good answer to that question, then I'm going to direct you back to Google, where I was this week, where you're going to find some really good and scholarly articles, some TED Talks where people talk about families and identity, where online forums exist, and there kind of feels like the people who are just shouting the loudest or the most comments, they feel like they're the winner in these discussions. I think the truth is, for many things, for us as people, I'm not sure if we can definitively prove one way or another, nature or nurture. But there is this one part of the Bible that we're going to talk about today that answers probably the biggest identity stuff. Just like last week in Genesis, we get to go and see that what God says here is literally world shaping and framework forming for us to look at life. This is going to be really big stuff and helpful for us to know who we are, who God has made us to be. So I think today the best, absolute best, and most exciting way for us to find out more about who we are and our identity is to read through some more genealogy. Yeah? It was pretty great, I have to say, just a couple minutes ago, looking at your faces as we went through Genesis 5 and the same list and the same things and names of people that you probably didn't know. Because genealogies are just that, right? Lists of parents and kids and kids and kids. Normally, it's the kind of thing that if you've got trouble sleeping at night, that you could pull one of these out from the Bible and take a look and start reading, and not after too long, you'd have an easier time sleeping. But this one today, I can promise you, is worth your attention. This is one that's going to help you know who you are. I'm pretty sure it came through 8 times in this list. And I hope as I said it and you thought about it, it made you wonder why. For every person in this list, you get a name, years lived, kids they had, and then he died. I'm not sure why, but reading it in the Hebrew, getting ready for the sermon, made it stand out really strongly for me. Vayamot, 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 vayamot. The end of a line, you can see it super clearly and well in the Hebrew. And he died, and he died, and he died, and he died. You listen in English and you can't help but hear the repetition and just feel like the permanent nature, the end of every person. And he died. And what we talked about last week is why the "and he died" is so rough to read in Genesis chapter 5. God actually summarizes that again, and that's where we're going to start. He says, "This is the written account of Adam's family line, the first person created. When God created mankind, he made them in the likeness of God. He created them male and female and blessed them." People had been created as the best thing. People of value by nature of just being people. God set people apart when he made people to be like him in his image, in his likeness, to be perfect, to live in perfection, and he blessed them as they kicked off that awesome life together. And then just a couple chapters later, that's not what we get in God's first genealogy, though. Instead, we get when Adam had lived 130 years, he had a son in his own likeness, in his own image. That's those 2 amazing words. It's in Hebrew, Zelem and Demut, that God used to teach us that he created people supposed to be like him, supposed to be perfect and holy and wanting only what was good and in line with God's will all the time. Like God, in his image. Zelem and Demut are words that teach people that we are set apart and have value and honor, and we're different from everything else that's created in this world. And then in Genesis 5, we get Zelem and Demut used to describe the next generation in who they would be. Now it was Adam had a son and not God created. Now Adam had a son, and that son was not like God anymore. Adam and Eve had messed up perfection by choosing to sin against God's good command. Adam and Eve had changed what every son and every generation after them would have to go through. Because that son now was born in Adam's likeness, in Adam's image. The exact same words that God used for him creating people to be like him, and now they're words that are used to teach something so sad. That people have been passing down their messed up nature to their kids and their kids and their kids all the way down. That first father-son relationship. And we have to learn that sin isn't just something that we do and mess up our own lives and ourselves. Sin is something that has been passed down to us from the first generation to the next, to the next, to the next, all the way back. Being people who have been messed up by sin is a part of who we are too. So that makes me wonder a little bit more today, why don't we act like that's part of who we are? I know that as I talk with you and get to know other people in our community, and if the question comes up, if people think they really can be perfect or have been perfect, I know your answer is no. I've never had an interaction with somebody that thinks they were good enough or close enough to perfect or that they can really do it. But honestly, do you live that way? Is that where your focus and motivation and drive has been, to try to make this a perfect place? I think I'm seeing something else in our culture and our time and ourselves. We want to fix the problems and the issues and fix the next generation after us and try to shape them to be better than we were. We say prayers with all our heart that God would come and change our country in whatever way you want God to change your country to be a better place, to be a better culture for us to live in. There is so much attention and anxiety and focus that we have in our time trying to solve worldwide problems to make this a better place. We want to make the world a better place for our kids to live in than it was for us when we were born. But I think as we put our hearts into that, and that's not bad on its own, but if that's where our hearts are, if that's what we're really trying to do, I think it's because we're missing this part of who we are. Because the reality is you and I cannot come close to fixing it for our kids or their kids or any next generation of this world after us. Sin has been passed down to us, and we've passed it down further. Sin and its effects in our world is a problem way too big for broken humans to solve. Part of our identity that we need to remember is that sin has been passed down to us, and that sin is going to stop us from coming up with any permanent solution that is really going to fix this world around us. No, instead there is a different family connection that you and I have to talk about today to know what's going to help this. And it's not a parent to kid anymore. It's our brother. It's how our brother was different from us and all other people. How our brother's work was going to be enough to make a difference that would last forever. How just like one person, Adam, messed it up for us and for all other people, how our brother, one person, could fix it for all. He's the promised one that's been kept through all these generations from Adam and Eve all the way down, and for many more after we read today. If you want to know who you are, look to your brother and your family. Learn more about Jesus. Because Jesus was fully God. All power and ability and knowledge. Jesus was hanging out in heaven in perfection and glory and everything perfect around him. And then he chose to come down here into the sin and mess and imperfection. He lived a life with imperfect people all around him in all his interactions. And with all of that, our brother Jesus never sinned once. Never lost his focus on what he was here to do. Always stayed on task to do what was good. He actually did live perfectly all the way till he was killed on the cross. All of this in our brother and by our brother so that his sacrifice could change who we are. could give us a new identity. What Jesus has done makes us God's kids when he connects us to him in our baptisms. It leaves us with hearts that are at peace after we take his body and blood with bread and wine in the Lord's Supper. Jesus gives us a new identity, people who have been forgiven, people who are connected now to him and part of his family. I don't know about you, and it probably depends on how old you are, but I think I'm old enough now to be a little bit amazed at how much stuff is still around today from decades ago. For 4 decades, this is older than me, but for 4 decades, we have been pumped, absolutely pumped for these little cardboard box sensations that come as Happy Meals. 4 decades of Happy Meals, and they're still around. Same thing with, maybe this will date you a little bit or me, same thing with Hubba Bubba bubble gum, right? Whether it's the little hard chewing squares or the tape that we've got. 4 decades of Hubba Bubba. 4 decades of Honey Nut Cheerios. This one might make you feel kind of old too. Did you know 4 decades of Microsoft Word? How about Mario and Luigi? Do you know Mario and Luigi are actually older than 40 years ago? Man, it makes you wonder if stuff like that can still be around and liked and popular. How did that make it and everything else just be gone and be done? But it's not just chance for, I think, most of these things that are still here. I think they're here because it's deliberate choice for us. Like how we today are bringing back the old and keeping it alive. Can you imagine what people would do if McDonald's tried to get rid of the Happy Meal? How many riots and awful things online we would see? How about the internet? How much that would explode if Nintendo tried to get rid of Mario and Luigi and not make more games? Even the movies, yeah, you can feel it, right? Even the movies and the TV shows that we pay money to watch, a lot of them are classics on these streaming services. Or now today, a lot of them are remakes made just more with the stars from today. It should be absolutely amazing that some characters and products have lasting power through generations and decades of history. What we see in this list that God gives us, this genealogy today, this has more lasting power, though, than just a few years or a few generations. This is parents to kids, to kids, to kids that did pass down sin and a sin messed up world. But what lasted through all of that was also the promise of a Savior. What lasted through that was people having a solid foundation of life without this necessity and feeling that you have to try to fix this world on your own. What was passed down was a connection to Jesus. From the very first people in that first promise of him, through this list, to you and me and part of who we are today. Because this is the other part of who you are and this identity that God gives you. You're like the people who've lived before you. God has made you part of his family. God has worked through people in this world like them to teach you more about who Jesus wants you to be. That you might be baptized and be adopted as his own. For that family relationship for generation after generation to be something you know is permanent. You're connected to him. An identity like that is something so amazing that it's been passed down to us. That's the kind of identity that I think you and I really want to treasure. It's the kind of thing you get t-shirts made so that people can know, hey, I am with him. It's like having a real connection with a real celebrity, right? And like going on your phone and punching their number in and they actually call and listen and talk to you. You and I are God's dearly loved children that he has adopted and brought into his family. You cannot treasure a gift like this too much. So my last encouragement for us in who we are today is just one simple thing. Try to treasure this connection a little bit more this week. Treasure this part of who you are as God's family member so that it's what people know you for. Starting from like the furthest out circles, the strangers that you meet at the store, the people that serve you your food, treasure it so much that they see it. Then move the circle in a little bit closer for the people you work with, the people you go to school with or are going to hang out with in the summer now, that they know this about you. It's who you are, it's what you're connected to. Even smaller circle then of the people that are the close friends, the people you call and you vent to, the people who you cry with and hug in the bad times, the people you can depend on. And then the last and closest circle, treasure it so much that the people that you live with, that this is what they see in you, that this is who they know you are. And this identity that has been passed down as adopted children of God, I promise you, in the smallest to the biggest circles of influence you have, this is going to leave a huge impression on people who know you. I don't think it's universally true, because I'm probably going to get rid of some of the stuff that maybe my parents want to pass down to me. But I think a couple things that can happen, though. The longer something gets passed down from parents to kids, maybe the more important that thing can become. Like uniforms from generations back, that you can have that hanging in your closet. That's cool. That's honorable. Or the crystal plates and glasses and fancy silverware that really goes back all the way to the first part of your family coming to America, their first fancy thing that they had, and now you get it. Maybe the house that your great-great-great-grandparents built as the first house where you can still go and be and visit today too. If you've got something like that passed down in your family that you want to pass down, I think a lot of us would consider that a treasure. Well, who you are has been passed down from the beginning to you right now. You are somebody who needs Jesus, and you are somebody that God has connected to Jesus. So keep on working your love for that treasure that has been passed down through generations from Adam and Eve all the way to you, to know who you are, that God has made you his. Amen.